Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're tuning in today. If you're a network engineer, a security architect, or just trying to navigate the messy, incredibly complex migration of the modern internet, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to master the architecture and the absolutely critical security rules of IPv4 and IPv6 coexistence. We're going way beyond the basics to see how these technologies actually interact in the real world, and more importantly, how you lock them down.
Let's kick things off with a pretty stark reality check. 2011. That's the year the IANA IPv4 free pool was totally depleted. All 5 regional internet registries exhausted their standard allocation pools shortly after. So why are we starting here? Because we really have to reframe our mindset. IPv4 address exhaustion isn't some theoretical far-off future risk that we need to prepare for. It's a concluded event. The well is dry, and there are no new public IPv4 allocations available.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll quickly cover why this transition is imperative, look at the 3 main paths of coexistence, break down the tricky tunneling and translation mechanisms, figure out how to actually defend your IPv6 perimeter, and finally, wrap up with a deep dive recap of the essential RFCs you absolutely need to know.
Okay, first up, the transition imperative. Let's look at why coexistence is literally unavoidable at this point.
Look at these numbers for a second. As of 2026, about 45% of users are hitting Google services over IPv6. Major ISPs, they are already operating IPv6-only access networks. The adoption is just massive. But what about that other 55% slice of the pie? That represents something incredibly stubborn. Legacy systems. We're talking operational technology, industrial control systems, and massive enterprise apps with hard-coded IPv4 assumptions. You can't just flip a switch and re-platform those overnight. That means IPv4 is going to persist for decades, and we are stuck in this prolonged coexistence phase.
Moving right along to the 3 main paths of coexistence: dual stack, tunneling, and translation.
Path number 1 is dual stack. Conceptually, it's a breeze, right? You just run complete IPv4 and IPv6 stacks side by side on every single node. The huge advantage here is that there's no translation overhead. Packets traverse the network end-to-end in their native protocol. But, and it's a massive but, you are literally doubling your IP address management complexity. And worse, you are doubling your security policy surface area. You're basically securing 2 distinct networks at the exact same time.
If you're not doing dual stack, you're probably leaning on one of these 2 alternatives: tunneling or translation. Tunneling is just encapsulating one protocol inside another to sneak across incompatible infrastructure. Translation, on the other hand, is converting headers right at the network boundary, either statefully or statelessly. Now, these are necessary band-aids for sure, but they are absolute nightmares for security architects. Think about it. Tunneling completely bypasses perimeter controls, and translation destroys end-to-end integrity.
Let's dig a bit deeper into these tunneling and translation mechanisms and see exactly how they bypass your perimeter.
Keep your ears open for the RFC numbers here, because we are going to tie them all together at the end. First up is automatic tunneling via 6 to 4, which is RFC 3056. The way this works is it derives an IPv6 prefix from a node's public IPv4 address using that fixed 2002:/16 prefix. Then it routes it through a public anycast relay at 192.88.99.1 to hit the IPv6 internet. It needs 0 ISP support, which sounds great for deployment, but it's terrifying for security. Because it relies on Protocol 41, you absolutely must log all Protocol 41 flows at your firewall, or you're going to miss unexpected inner IPv6 traffic entirely.
Next is Teredo, defined in RFC 4380. Now, if you are a security architect, this one is probably keeping you up at night. Teredo is a perimeter's worst enemy because its entire goal is to punch through NAT devices. It does this by encapsulating IPv6 packets inside UDP IPv4 traffic, specifically aiming for destination port 3544. It actually uses external servers to figure out your NAT type and drill a hole right through it. The golden rule here: if you are not explicitly running Teredo in your architecture, block UDP port 3544 unconditionally. No exceptions.
Switching gears to translation, we have RFCs 6146 and 6147. These work beautifully together as NAT64 and DNS64. It's a pretty brilliant trick, honestly, letting an IPv6-only host talk to a legacy IPv4 server transparently. DNS64 basically fakes a quad A record from a standard IPv4 A record using a specific NAT64 prefix, usually 64:FF90B:/96. The client thinks it's talking to an IPv6 server, but the NAT64 translator at the boundary is swapping it back to IPv4. Super elegant, yes? But again, your end-to-end visibility is completely gone.
All right, Section 4. Let's talk about actually defending that IPv6 perimeter and handling bogons. Seriously, grab a screenshot right now. This is your definitive IPv6 bogon block list for ingress filtering from external interfaces. You need to explicitly drop loopbacks, unspecified addresses, and link local addresses from entering your external boundary. And pay really close attention to those transition tech blocks we just covered. If you aren't running 6-4, block 2000:16. And, as we just discussed, unconditionally drop 2001:32 to kill any rogue Teredo tunnels dead in their tracks.
Another huge defensive concept is interface address complexity. Since IPv6 mostly ditches NAT, basically every host gets a globally routable address. But wait, they don't just get one. A single host usually has a link local address, a globally unique address via Slack, maybe a unique local address, and, here's the real kicker, temporary privacy addresses. Because of Best Current Practice 38 and RFC 6724, your firewall rules have to account for these temporary privacy addresses, not just your static GUAs. If they don't, your policies are going to get completely bypassed by outbound connections.
Finally, let's pull all this standard knowledge together. This is the Security Architect's Rulebook.
As promised, here is your ultimate RFC cheat sheet. We already hit RFC 3056 for 6-4, 4380 for Teredo, and 6146 and 6147 for NAT and DNS64. But check out these critical infrastructure rules. RFC 4890, that is your absolute Bible for filtering ICMPv6. You cannot just blindly drop all ICMP like you could in v4, or you will literally break your network. Then there's RFC 6105, providing the guardrails against rogue router advertisements. RFC 7123 explicitly details the risks of running IPv6 over IPv4 networks. And if you're building out operational policies right now, RFC 9099 is your go-to guide. Memorize these RFC numbers, folks. They are the absolute foundation of your perimeter defense.
I do want to take a quick second to give a shout out to Virtualization Options LLC. The sheer depth of the insights in this explainer is entirely thanks to their rigorous research and structural analysis. It really provided the backbone for our deep dive today. So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with a somewhat provocative question to chew on. Look at your edge right now. Your perimeter is almost certainly dual stacked today, right? But honestly ask yourself, is your security policy dual stacked to match? Or are you unknowingly leaving massive tunnels wide open? Thank you so much for hanging out with us for this explainer. Keep those RFCs handy and stay secure out there.